today's topic is the 7 wonders of the mind, because we talk about the 7 wonders of the world, right? The Taj Mahal, the Eiffel Tower, but they're actually quite small compared to the amazing amazement of what is inside us. So just first of all to ask you, what is the most valuable thing that you have in your life? What is the most valuable thing you have in your life?
Health.
Health? Yeah, that's very valuable. What else?
Money.
This thing even determines your health to a great extent. The mind, right? And we'll find out more about that as we go into today's topic. But the most valuable thing we have is our mind. Some people might say they're children, but if you don't have your mind, you don't even know you've got children. And if you don't have your mind, you're a headache for your children. So the mind is really the most important thing that we have in our life. And yet, did you learn anything about it when you're in school? Anything? What did they tell you about your mind? Anything? As if it kind of doesn't even really exist. Even the brain, I mean, the soul uses the brain, right? Also such an important organ in the body, so important, but we didn't learn anything about it, how to look after it. We learned something about the health, but we didn't learn anything about this kind of really important aspects of health. So we're going to explore the 7 wonders of the mind in the WONDERS. So it makes it easy for me to remember, and hopefully you too. So W, what do you think W would stand for? To do with the mind. Waves. In fact, brain waves, we call it, brain waves. So we have been led to believe recently that we have to think fast, do everything fast, it's efficient, it's effective. You know, we've been kind of told we should be fast. But the science is telling us that the more we slow down, the more efficient, effective, and powerful. So especially the more we slow down our mind. So, you know, they talk about the brain waves. Beta, alpha, theta, delta, and one of the most recent ones that I don't think they have really understood much is gamma. So beta's normal thinking. We need beta. We function on beta. But if it's high beta, then it's going into stress. And every time we think, we create chemicals. We are like a pharmacy. We create hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of chemicals. Right? They're all inside us, which is why we don't, if we master our mind, we should not need most of the medicine, because we can create those chemicals, especially mood-altering drugs, because we can learn to do that ourselves. So when we think too fast, we're actually producing in our body, we're producing cortisol, which is called the stress hormone, and adrenaline. And neither of them are good for the body. Have you ever felt stressed? Ever? Yes. What does it feel like? How would you describe your body when you're stressed? What's going on? How does it feel?
Uneasy.
Uneasy? And what's going on? Is it cool and light? And is it? No, it's like agitated. You know, you feel inside like this, you know? Tight and like this. And that is so unhealthy. Because, you know, we have a chi. We have an energy flowing through the body. But as soon as we block it. So every time we do this, we block it. And imagine living like this. What's happening to that flow? And we actually have a built-in immune system. So our body is meant to heal itself. It's set up to heal itself. So if you burn yourself, you see, you know, that whole area becomes red because all the cells are going there and working. Same with any organs, you know, where we've got an amazing body and we've got an immune system to help us to heal. But if we're in stress, none of those cells are free because they're just keeping us functioning. They're busy with our liver, with our heart. They're all busy. They've got no extra time, so they can't do the healing. And this is also why when we sleep, we do a lot of healing. Because then we're free. But nowadays people can't even sleep. And even when they sleep, they dream, you know, often very, you know, anxious dreams or scary dreams. So we really need to calm down. So we go from beta to alpha. And alpha is just light relaxation. It's not very deep meditation. It's just relaxation, calmness. When you become calm and relaxed, what do you feel then? What do you feel? What feelings come when you're feeling relaxed? Released? Yeah, but we start to feel happy. When we're relaxed, we feel happy because we actually release serotonin, which is the happiness hormone. So it's actually, naturally we feel happy because that chemical is being released. And we also produce melatonin, which is good for sleep. You go to the pharmacy, you'll see all this on the bottles. If you need to sleep, you'll see this one, it says melatonin. You need to wake up in the morning, serotonin. These chemicals are real things, but we produce them in our own body. I don't know how they put them in the bottles, actually. How do they do that? I don't know, but they can do that. So when we eat certain foods also, they do this. That's why the yogis talk about a sattvic diet that's good for the mind, that makes the mind relaxed and happy. Whereas foods that are tamasic, like drugs and alcohol and meat and things, they make the soul heavy because of what's inside these foods. It's not imagination, it's inside. It's also chemicals, because when you kill an animal, it has adrenaline going through its system because of the fear. Then when you eat it, that's affecting you. You know, it's all science. It's not like imagination, it's science. So when we slow down our thoughts to theta, that's very interesting. Because theta, we don't only produce more serotonin, more melatonin, we also we release the human growth hormone, DHEA. You know, we are actually rejuvenating ourselves because we're creating the chemicals to do that. But what's really important about slowing down to theta, they say when you're in theta, you can learn. That is really interesting. And you can change. So we all want to change, right? That's why we come here every day. But unless we're relaxed, unless we slow down, we might think, I want to change, but we won't. Because we're not releasing those chemicals and being in a receptive state that we can change. Fascinating. And delta is really deep. what's interesting about these brainwaves also, they say that if you're even in alpha, your thoughts are 7 times more powerful than normal thinking. What does that mean? 7 times more powerful. What does it mean practically? It means whatever you think, it has 7 times more chance of happening. And when we're in delta, 35 times more chance of happening. 35 times. So your thought has 35 times more chance of being successful. Amazing. Really amazing. And why I'm interested in this kind of brain science, neuroscience, and all the science of the mind is because we experience many of these things, but we don't know how, we don't know what's really going on. We just know it works and we get all these experiences. And science is now researching and explaining what's happening and why these things are happening. We don't know why we feel happy when we meditate. We do, but why? I don't know. So then we understand these things. And I would say that nearly any thought I have, it happens. Nearly any thought. So maybe I do produce some delta waves or close to it, because whatever I think, it happens. And I'll give you 2 amazing examples of that. There's many, 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 but the 2 most clear and quite amazing, I think. When they opened the retreat centre in Oxford, it was our first retreat centre. And I really had a strong feeling I want to go. And I was living in Hong Kong. I'm surrendered, so I don't have income. So I don't have any money to buy a ticket, but I felt, I really want to go. I feel I'm meant to be there. And then I found out people were going from all over the world that I knew, and I felt I'm meant to be there. There was more of that feeling that I see myself there. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll book a ticket and then see what happens. You know, so I booked a ticket. And 2 days later, this sister who was coming to the class, she wasn't a BK, but a lady who was coming to the class in Hong Kong, she said to me, I'm going to the UK to put my children in summer school. Will you accompany me? I'll pay for your ticket. In London, going to summer school in London. That's already amazing. But I asked her, what date are you travelling? It was the date I booked. You know, how does that happen, actually? How does it happen? And another one is exactly similar to that. I was in Cambodia and I went to Korea for some service, and I met all these amazing people. So the sister said, when you come back, can you come back? Daddy Janki's coming in another month. And I said, well, it'd be really good if I could help. She wanted my help. I said, I'd like to help, but you don't have money for the air ticket, I don't think, and nor do I. So we just thought, it's a good idea, see what happens. Again, and for me it always happens within 48 hours, as far as I can remember. Within 2 days, I received an invitation to go to an interfaith conference in Korea, ticket paid. But again, the amazing thing was that conference finished the day before Daddy Janki was to arrive. So it didn't even clash, you know? It could have clashed, it could have been 1 week, then what to do, you have a whole week, you know? The day before. What is that? In quantum physics, they say there's a field of unlimited possibilities, and you just have to pick one up. It sounds like amazing, but it's my experience. And we furnished our whole centre in Hong Kong. We moved from a very small centre to a very big one. And we furnished the whole centre. As soon as we think, somebody would offer it. Like, incredible. The only thing we paid for was the wires, the wood, because we had to, like, build it from empty shell. So we paid for the wood and the wires, but the carpet, the air conditioning, the furniture, it all came. How does that work? And what was behind that particular situation, I read a book called The Tao of Leadership. You know the Tao teaching? The Tao of Leadership. And there was a line in that I remember. I don't remember anything else in the book, but there was one line that said, few leaders realize how little they have to do. Few leaders realize how little they have to do. And that struck me, you know, like I really kind of knew it. You know when you read something that you just know it. And I just naturally started to practice that. And that's how we finished everything. Just think and you'll come. So it meant no expectations, no overthinking, no thinking how, not even thinking what. Just letting it happen. And it happened in such a way that I even became a bit embarrassed because a lot of the furniture was very expensive, donated by people, and a lot of it was even antique. So I thought, it looks too good for a Raj Yoga Center, and Mother Teresa was coming to Hong Kong. Someone said, should I bring it to the center? I said, no, our center's too opulent, she won't like it. Because she doesn't like wealth, she likes everything to be simple. But I thought, what do I do? Throw away all the good stuff and buy lousy things that I can afford? So it was really quite something. So that's waves, W for waves. What do you think O is for? What would O stand for? Oneness. There's been a lot of research done by on students and businesses in America. And there was a book that I read called Flourishing Enterprises. And it was all about helping to create the experience of oneness for people in their higher studies as well as in business. And what they were doing is seeing what impact that experience of oneness would have on people. And I think why they chose that particular word and that particular experience is because they kind of were saying, really that's a common word we can all use for spirituality. So the new definition, I would say, for spirituality is moving in that area of oneness. And I think that's quite accurate from my experience, because when I have my deepest connection with God, when I'm really connected, I don't just feel connected with God, I feel connected with everyone and everything. It's an experience of oneness. And if you talk to anyone who have really had kind of, you know, those experiences that are beyond, they will often describe it in one way or another as oneness. Like it could be oneness with nature. You know, like for example, I went to a retreat centre. It's not there anymore in Australia. It was a small one set up by a brother. So I went to this retreat centre, and after the early morning meditation, when we finished at 4:45, it was in a very beautiful forest. So I just went out in the morning after the meditation and sat on a log. It was still completely dark, and I thought, I'll just sit here until the sun rises so I can enjoy just watching the sunrise in the forest. So I was sitting on this log, and something happened, like something, and all of a sudden, all of the animals started to jump and fly, and I thought I was alone. You know, I thought I was sitting there all alone. It was dark, I couldn't see anything. I thought I was sitting there all alone on this log. But when everything came to life like that, I had a moment of being one with everything. You know, so we get these experiences in nature. We can get these experiences from music, of being you know. Again, that was another experience. In the retreat centre in Sydney, we organised a concert by some of the BK musicians. And to be honest, it's medieval music. And it's not really my cup of tea, you know. So I thought, okay, and I was the organiser, so I thought I'll sit with the children because this concert was going on for nearly 2 hours. So I thought I'll sit with the children, there was 2-3 children, because they're bound to get restless, so I can take them out because I don't mind, right? So I sat with these children, and really I'm not particularly fond of this music, but I got carried away with it. And the children must have too. They didn't move for nearly 2 hours. Small children, like 8, 10 years old, that kind of age. 3 of us were sitting there, and it transcended like and dislike. You know, like there was no like or dislike. It was just being in a space. Just being in a space. So when we can go to that space, there's not like and dislike. We're one with whatever that experience is. So that was another experience. So I know what they mean by oneness. You know, I can relate to what that is. So they were helping people through prayer, through meditation, through immersing them in nature, through music, but they were just helping them to produce an experience of oneness. And the outcome was that whoever was able to create that experience of oneness, they found that they had higher resilience in times of stress and situations that they were going through. They didn't have that level of stress, so they had less stress, more resilience, and they were more able to deal with people. You know, it was just like they were studying all these parameters. And it was interesting because this is such corporate language. They said people who experience oneness have a competitive edge over others. I thought that's such a funny language. Competitive edge over others in business. So great, really great results and research. So then, so wonders, W-O-N. N is for what? This one you might not get. Neuroscience. So the study now that I'm talking about, to some extent, it's kind of often involves neuroscience. So it's a study of the brain, but the study of the brain, they're studying the brain waves, they're studying what they call the neural pathways. So if you can learn all of this on Google. That's why I like to share this, because this is just opening up worlds, like the world of brainwaves, the world of oneness, the world of neuroscience, because there's so much wonderful information out there. But I will mention one particular person that I take most inspiration from. His name is Joe Dispenza, D-I-S-P-E-N-Z-A. Amazing YouTube talks, but if you listen to one, if you can find it, on imagination, because it's his story of how he had a crash when he was only 24. He was on a bicycle and he went straight into a car and he broke his spine in two, like that. He said, just like a pretzel. And the doctors told him that he would not be able to stand again unless he had 2 steel plates put in his lower and upper back. So that's what they planned to do, so that he could at least stand up. But of course his future wasn't looking very good. I don't know how he knew so much about this, because this would have been about 35 years ago, because now he looks like, on YouTube, I don't know how old he is, but he looks about 60, so it must be about 35 years ago. But he had in his mind, and this is what they say in neuroscience, that the brain doesn't know the difference between the past, present, and future. And the brain doesn't differentiate between doing and imagining doing. So they've done this experiment of getting people to play a piece on the piano, right? A new piece. Then they measured their neural pathways to see what happened to that memory, you know, so they can measure the change in the brain, because every time we memorize something, we've put a new neural pathway. That's how we learn. Interesting, isn't it? So they measured the brain, but then they got another group of people to imagine playing the piano. So they didn't touch the piano. They just imagined playing this piece. And what happened is they had this almost the identical neural pathway created. So they didn't touch anything. So it means you don't have to actually do it. So what he did with his mind, he is not a neuroscientist, he's a chiropractor. So maybe that helped a lot because he knows the back very well. So he imagined himself, he disciplined himself for 4 hours every day. He imagined himself doing everything that you would normally do. And he imagined his back, how it would move and everything. So he imagined himself getting up out of bed, brushing his teeth, putting on his clothes, cooking, walking, driving. He imagined himself. So 4 hours a day with a lot of discipline. He said if his mind wandered, he'd start again. 4 hours. He was disciplined in this. It's amazing. You'll find this hard to believe, but he's very famous, so it must be true. Somebody must have looked at his records. After 12 weeks without the operation, he was living a normal life. Can you believe it? It's hard to believe it. Amazing. A normal life without the operation. And they told him, you know, they always try to scare you, doctors. They told him, if you don't do it now, and you delay it, because he was doing this experiment that they didn't want him to do, they said, if you delay this operation, it will be much worse, because we'll have to break your back again to set it, you know, because we have to set your back. True, right? Because the back will... And he took all that risk. So brave, really, but... And he made a promise that if this works, he will dedicate his whole life to the mind-body connection, which he's done. That's why he's got all these great books and YouTubes, and he does training all over the world. But really amazing. And the one book that I read, I didn't read others, but it's really good. It's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Because his whole point is that we are a habit. You know, I think in the same way as I thought yesterday, or they say 95% of the thoughts we have today, we had the same thoughts yesterday. How boring. You know, we're so habituated to be us. We have to break the habit of being ourselves. So, neuroscience. Another thing he says in that book, which is very good for our meditation, he said that people think about 3 things all day. What do you think? People, right? Do you think about people? People, things, you know, things, and time. People, things, and time. And he asked, what would you think about if you did not think about people, things, or time? What would you think about if you didn't think about people, things, or time? What would you think about? What is beyond people, things, and time? God and soul. Soul's not a thing. You know, even when we think about people, we're getting distracted by the role they're playing, their activities, their personality. That's all people. Soul is beyond all of that. And what else? Qualities. Love, peace, happiness. So why are we thinking all the time about people, things, and time? We should be thinking about what's beyond people, things, and time. And that's why we talk in Raja Yoga about the bodiless stage. You know, going beyond people, things, and time. How powerful that space is, being soul conscious. And there was another person with a bit of a similar story. He was on a bicycle and he also went into a truck. But he smashed all his arms and legs. This leg was not just broken but shattered. This leg broken, this arm, so he was in traction like this. But what was amazing is for 10 days, he didn't experience any pain. He wasn't on painkillers. He wasn't in a coma. And he was able to talk to people, but he didn't feel his body. So he became curious. He's an Australian. He became curious, where was I for those 10 days? Like, where was I? Why didn't I feel my body? Where was I? Right? It's a good question, isn't it? So because of that curiosity, he started to learn about meditation, he started to learn about the mind. He's about the same age as that other person. And now he's a Qigong master. He travels from Australia to China, taking groups of people. And he's so healthy. He's a Qigong master. But they were telling him, you'll never have a normal life, you have to accept it, and all of this. And that first one, Joe, he had a very nice way to say it too. When he had this accident, he called him the great intelligence. He talked to the great intelligence, and he said, you are the great intelligence. This is a very small job for you. That's very nice, isn't it? He said, this is a very small job for you. Come on. So he must have been having some yoga, I guess, in a way too, but quite nice. So N is for neuroscience. Again, a whole world you can explore. D. D is for, this is a word you hear a lot of in Raja Yoga. Come on, it's not so hard, like neuroscience. D is for detachment. When we start to meditate on a regular basis, and what I'd like you to observe in your daily life, what we generally experience is that we are there, but not completely there. Right? I noticed this once. I was walking down the street and I thought, I'm here, but I'm not really here. And I thought, yeah, actually most of the time, I'm here, but not really here. Wonderful, actually. Because what happens when we have that little bit, it's a very small gap, this detachment, but when we have that small gap, we're not up against things. You know, if I don't have this detachment, whatever happens, it's like everything impacts me. But when I have this little detachment, I can stop, think, and act. It doesn't take much. It's just a very small gap. But it's the gap between the soul and the body. I'm a soul using this body. I'm playing a part. You know, we really do have this. You watch yourself. I mean, I just became aware of it one time and I thought, oh, that's really good. That explains a lot also, how we cope with things. Because we don't immediately react. We have a gap where we can stop, think, and then decide how to behave. So we act, we don't react. And people think, when you hear the English word detachment, people often think it's very aloof and not very loving, but actually it's more loving to be detached. than attached. Attachment is controlling. When we're attached, we're always trying to control in some way. Attached to our role, attached to someone, attached to our body. We try and control it. We try to stop it having wrinkles, stop it doing this and that, you know? So when we're detached, we don't try to control. We just accept. So with people, when we are detached, we accept, we allow. Okay, you think like that. Okay, your values are like that. Okay, you behave like that. Just have to detach because they are playing their role. I'm playing my role. I can't control them. I can't stop them, which we still try to do so much, don't we? So much. We think so much about others and what they're doing and why they're doing it, how they're doing it. Too much. So when we're detached, we allow. And what we heard recently, which has really struck me the last week, twice it was said, who are the ones that can experience God's love? Those who have no attachments. Because we're so free. But when we're attached to anything, we're occupied. God can't get through. We're not open. We're busy. When we're attached, we're really getting stuck somewhere. E, I don't think you'll guess, but you might. E is for epigenetics. Epigenetics means it's one of the latest studies in medical science. So epigenetics means beyond genetics. So medical science has said that we are determined, our health will be determined by our genes, right? So when you go to a doctor, they'll ask you, did your mother have this illness? Did your father have illness? You have to write all these things down because then they can think why you've got this and what's going to happen. But epigenetics is the study that says if you think on a high level, positive and mostly positive, then you can go beyond genetics. It has a greater impact than the genetics. And they've done research on, elderly people. They say people that are positive, elderly people, they said they walk 7 times faster than people who are negative. Funny things like this. They did another study on AIDS patients, and they looked at they took the people who had a belief in God, and they did a study comparing those who believed in God as punishing and those who believed in God as forgiving and loving. And they found that those who believed in God as forgiving and loving, their T cell count increased, which is what they need for recovery. It's to do with your immune system. So those who saw God as loving, they were able to, when they focused on it, they were able to increase their cell count. And they had a much less effect of the AIDS, and they didn't die, basically. You can have AIDS and live forever, or you can have AIDS and quickly get a secondary, So what they found is those that believed in God as loving, they improved. And what was really funny is the end of that research, they advised, this is a book by medical scientists, they said, if your religion allows it, see God as loving and not as punishing. If your religion allows it, And when you think about that, I thought about that, and I thought, all religions have two sides. Like Christianity, there's a punishing God, and there's a loving God. Islam, there's a punishing God and a loving God, especially Sufism. You know, that's all just love, like Rumi and this kind of thing. So, and same with Buddhism, that also has a punishing and a loving. Even if you don't say it's God, it's still got a philosophy of punishment and love. And the punishment also has a lot to do with superstition. You know, it's quite interconnected. The more superstition, usually the more punishing the attitude is. So I really like this, that the medical scientists were saying, if your religion allows, choose the loving God because it's better for your health. I think that's fantastic. So epigenetics, and then R is for, now this is a real Raj Yogi word. R is for, we hear it every day, 10 times, every morning. Remembrance. R is for remembrance. So what do we have to remember? First and foremost, we remember that I am a being of peace and love. I don't have to become loving. I don't have to become strong and powerful. I don't have to become wise. I have to remember, oh, that's who I really am. Because trying to become can be very difficult. And you kind of have to believe in yourself, and it's complicated. But remembering that I am love, I am peace, I am bliss, I am happiness, is the shortcut to any kind of upliftment. So remember that. And then we have to remember who I was, and according to Raj Yoga, we started off as very pure, powerful beings, and then we forgot who we are, and started to think of ourselves as so ordinary, but we're not. We're souls, and the soul, anyway, that's the next one, soul, so remembrance. So also remembrance of God, because what happens when we remember God, I don't see that it's some miracle that God, you know, gets you a parking space and does all those kinds of things, changes the weather and all of that. But what happens is when we remember God, that is the highest consciousness we can be in, because it is beyond, right? So we're going beyond this world, and it's called transcendence. We need to transcend this ordinary consciousness, because as we learn from neuroscience, things are not as real as they seem. The reality is completely different to what we think of it as. How did that person, Joe, how did he heal himself? How did he heal his back? How did he do that? Practically. Is it a miracle? How did it work scientifically? You know what science says, quantum physics says, is that we are, like this, is 99.99999% space, energy. It's only 0.00001% particle. Have you heard that? I still can't fully get my head around it, but it's a reality, it's true. If you look at any science, quantum physics, that's what they say. We are more nothing than something. We are 99.99999% energy. So what's the reality? So this, it seems solid, doesn't it? It's not. This wall also, it's vibrating molecules. Because an atom, we're made up of atoms, right? Everything's made up of atoms. The atom has a minute particle, and then it has these protons, neutrons. They're not physical. They're energy, they're waves. So that's how he healed himself, because he's not physical anyway. So when we say, but it's the reality, how can this happen? It's the reality. Then you have to think, well, maybe, maybe not. What is reality? It's not what we think. It's not what we've believed. And that's why it's so hard for us, because we've kind of got a belief system that we have to shift. And there's such an amazing story. I'm trying to track down the original story of this, but this was supposed to be a true story, according to the person who told me. So I said, please try and get the facts, because I want to be sure. But what happened is this man and his son were in a forest in Bolivia, and the father was cutting the trees, and somehow that boy got in the way, and his finger got cut off, the top of his finger, down to here. He was 5 years old. They were so far from anywhere, from a hospital or anything. It was bleeding a lot. And about 2 hours they would have to travel to a hospital. Now, this is supposed to be true. This is what was reported. That this little boy's finger grew back within 1 hour. That's why I want the facts, because it's hard to believe, but this is apparently what happened. And they asked that little boy, how did he do that? Interesting. Can you imagine how he did that? This boy loves lizards. Lizards. What's lizard in Chicha. This boy loves lizards. What happens with lizards? When they drop their tail, it grows back again, right? Yes. So this little boy thought it was normal. Just like the lizard, when the lizard's tail comes off, it grows back. So he just expected it to grow back. And you know, children, they're so, they're so uninhibited by doubts and things like that. So he just thought, oh, I have to grow it back because it's come off. And it grew back. But how interesting that he had that connection with lizards. Otherwise, probably he wouldn't think of it, right? But he just had this, well, it'll grow back like the lizard's tail. So, remembrance. Then S is for soul. So we know theoretically, okay, we know theoretically that everything we need is within ourselves. All peace, all power, all love, all wisdom. Everything I need is within myself. I'm a soul. And a soul is a being of peace and love and power and wisdom and bliss. So if we could be soul conscious, what one time our class said, if we were soul conscious, everything we saw would look different. And I have, and maybe you have had, moments of being in like a super consciousness where it's like you just know everything at that moment. Have you had that? Yeah? And one of the times I had this was so ordinary. It was in my lunch break when I'd only been practicing Raja over a few years. It was in my lunch break, and I went to the supermarket, very ordinary supermarket, one of those cheap ones, and I got a bag of groceries, and I was going back to work, and I had to stop at the lights for the traffic light. I had one of those experiences there, in the middle of the day. Why then and there? I don't know. You know, it just, but I felt like I knew everything. It's like whoever I saw, I could see that this soul has a whole world. They have their own part. It was like that kind of thing. And there was a block of flats, and I remember looking there and thinking, wow, and that's another whole world. Each family, there's a whole world going on in each and every family as well. And I just had this super consciousness, like the feeling was I knew everything. That was the feeling. I mean, it didn't last long, so I don't know, what that means, I know everything, but that was the feeling that came, that I just felt I knew everything. So I had a glimpse into how I would see things if I was soul conscious. So when we were talking about detachment, like if I saw that your whole world, like I don't have to understand it, but I just know that you have your own destiny, you have a part, you have your own world. It's like none of my business. It's just like a kind of a recognition and a detachment, because it's your world. Who am I to comment on it or to try and change it or expect anything different? It's your world. So the soul has all this kind of incredible ability. Now we'll go back to, I didn't touch on gamma waves. Gamma waves are interesting because with the brain waves, it says the slower you think, the more powerful your thoughts and the more effective, right? So what we need to do, we can't control our thoughts as well as we control our actions or our words, right? Thoughts are harder, easiest to control actions, second words, and third thoughts. Is it true? So when I used to teach meditation in Hong Kong, so many super stressed people that not only could their mind not stay still, their body couldn't stay still. I found so many business people had like a or a something. They couldn't keep their body still. They'd have some, and I thought, wow, that's really a sign of stress. That they can't sit still. So I used to tell them, just train yourself and just become conscious. So when you're doing this, just be aware of what's going on in your mind and bring yourself into relaxation so that it stops. But it just goes to show that that's the, what happens, like first the mind, then the words, then the body. So we need to, that's why we say we need to conquer our senses. So we need to be aware of our actions. And a friend of mine in Hong Kong, when his card just says activist, because he's so active. It just says activist. He set up the translation department at the Baptist University. He has a family. He does a daily, he writes a daily column for a newspaper, daily. And he does a weekly radio program. And he runs an organic farm, a community farm, like a big organic farm, like 10 times this, where all the community comes and farms, So he runs that, and he had a meditation group. And he takes his dog for a walk. I said, how do you do all of this? So, but what he did, on his 50th birthday, which was a very nice thing, he gave himself the gift of going slowly. That was his birthday gift to himself, going slowly. And he said he got so much more done by doing everything more slowly. And I think we've all experienced that too. When you're in a very calm inner state, it is amazing how much you get done. And you don't feel like you're doing anything. I've experienced that, like in the morning we cook between the Amrit Vela and morning class. We cook pork, we cook something. When I'm in a really good stage, You know, like you just do everything like, it's just so perfect. And you do everything so quickly and you think, how did I do that so quickly? How come I'm finished already? It's like you stop and you think, wow, that's amazing that I did all of that and I'm already finished. And how did that happen, right? You all have that experience at some point. So that's what happens when we're in the gamma. So gamma, actually the thoughts are really, really fast. Really, really fast. But when we're in beta and the thoughts are fast, they're like this. They're not cohesive. They're like this. So that's why we're using a lot of energy. But in gamma, what they say is that they're very, very fast, but they're like this. So they're called aha, the aha moments. You know, when you have a realization, it's like, you know, it's blissful, it's enlightened, it's sparks, you know, that's gamma. So when we're in gamma, we're in a super consciousness. So this is the normal state of the soul when we're soul conscious, that we're in this blissful, happy, high, beautiful inner state, but outside calm. So to reach that stage, we should be aware of our actions. It's not that you don't do a lot. You can, but nothing wasteful, nothing extra, nothing unnecessary. And don't do too much. Because I remember I noticed myself many years ago, I can see exactly where I was sitting, what I was thinking. But I remember realizing one day, you're doing too much. Because I was working full time, and I was living in the centre, and I'd get home from work at 5:30. My first class would be 6, second 7, third 8. I'd fit in 3 courses of a night. So you have to be on time, right? I've got to finish this one for the next one. And I was enjoying it. It wasn't that I created the program, no one else. It's not that I wasn't enjoying it, but I thought, why am I living like this? What am I doing? You know, I don't have to live like this. Because if anything goes wrong, you haven't got any margin. And that's not, you know, life is always got lots of things, right? So I just stopped doing so much. I would also on a Sunday, you know, in Hong Kong somebody used to give me a car, so I'd do many things. I'd visit people, I enjoyed it. It wasn't that I wasn't enjoying these things, but I was just doing too much. And I noticed, you know, when I noticed it, it was like I was driving from one place to the other, and I was going as fast as I could because I was late. And then I thought, you know, this is not sensible. You're driving too fast, it's not safe. If you don't drive fast, you won't get there. So I just thought, no, I'm not going to do so much. I'm going to do what's comfortable. Just don't do so much. And it was like a renunciation in a way, because I want to do all those things. But no, I will do what is comfortable, so I don't stress myself and I don't stress anyone else. Just do what is comfortable. So I learned that also at one point, just do less. But that's very interesting. Brian Bacon also talks about that in his self-management leadership. Doing less is doing more. And it goes back to that. Few leaders realize how little they have to do. It just happens. Everything happens when we do less. It's about being in the right state of consciousness. So when we're soul conscious, we have all of this ability. And the other thing is connecting with the Supreme Soul, because that's where the power comes from. You know, before Raj Yoga, I didn't believe in God, but I wanted to be a better person. I was practicing Buddhism for a few years. And actually studying Buddhism made me feel worse, because the teachings were so high and I wasn't able to live up to that. So I felt worse about myself instead of better. Not because of the teachings, because I couldn't do it. But once I started to connect, I'm being quite happy with my transformation. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not perfect still. It's much slower than I thought. But still, I can see I'm changing. I'm all the time changing and going forward. That's the most important thing. I'm more realistic about how long it's going to take and accepting myself. So the wonders, what are they? 7. W? Waves. O? Oneness. N? Neuroscience. D? Detach. E? Epigenetics. R? Remembrance. S? Soul and Supreme Soul. Yeah. So any questions, comments?
So at the moment, the situation that we are in, throughout the day, there's so many thoughts. How are we able to kind of get ourselves into the state of calmness, the mind?
That's what I was also saying. If you are doing too much physically, start there. You know, think about what you can let go of, or that you can do in a smarter way. You know, when people work too hard, I say to them, they want a lot of recognition. I say, you're probably not working smart if you're working that hard. Because I think you can work smart instead of hard. So check that I'm working smart rather than hard. Because a lot can be done with thought, a lot can be done with better planning, a lot can be done with cooperation. You know, why am I doing everything? Why don't I also take help from others? Why don't I delegate? Sometimes we're doing too much because we don't delegate. We're too, you know, obsessive. We hold on to things rather than give others a chance. So first start with actions, then with words. Make sure you're not talking too much, unnecessarily, too many words. You know, like we say in Raj Yoga, you know, if you can say something in 5 words, don't use 50. Because actually when you talk a lot, people don't hear most of it. But when you talk little, they really listen because you don't say much. So people pay attention. So check your words. Reduce your words. Soften your words also, because loud words have more energy in them, both for speaking and for listening. Right? So if we speak softer, not so soft that people can't hear you, because that's really annoying. In fact, some people stopped coming to class in Hong Kong because one of the sisters spoke too softly. They said, we can't hear. What's the point of coming to the class? I'm sure she's saying very good things, but I can't hear. And I asked so many times, can you speak up? But she doesn't. And sometimes we think that's being angelic. It's being angelic. She speaks softly. You should be speaking like an angel. How do you feel when you try to listen to me like that? You know, we have to be sensible. So not too loud, not too soft. We can even record ourselves. You know, have a normal conversation and say, like they say, you know, in the training, you're on the phone and they say, this conversation will be recorded for training purposes, right? We can do it for ourselves. When we're having a conversation, you can say to the person you're talking with, do you mind if I record this? I'm just listening to myself to see what, and you can see how much you talk about yourself. You can learn a lot listening to yourself. How much you're saying, I, you know, just listen to yourself. Be conscious. If you don't record it, at least listen while you're speaking. That's again being detached. Listen while you're speaking. Be introvert. Be aware. And if you pay attention to your actions, if you pay attention to your words, already your thoughts will have reduced 70%. 70%. And then you just have 30% to pay attention to. It's much easier, right? So this is the step-by-step process. Because it's harder to monitor your thoughts. You can't record your thoughts. You can record your words. You can even record your actions. You know, you can keep a note. You know, but your thoughts you don't have so much control over. So better to do the other two first. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
Just put a point.
Full stop. Put the point. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It would be very good if we could, but it's not that easy. We need to, but it's not that easy. But that's why we practice this traffic control. Actually, the traffic control, you have music, and actually it's, here you can also hear the mosque, right? It goes off 5 times a day. So either your traffic control or you know you hear the mosque, and 5 times a day you just, when you hear it, just do traffic control of your mind. Just check what you're thinking. Stop whatever you're thinking. As a practice, stop. So in Mount Abu, you know, we have that experience very strongly because everyone's walking, talking, working. The music goes on. Everything just stops. And everyone goes into action. But it's not a matter of physically stopping. The practice is about this. Physical's nothing. Even though that's sometimes hard too. Because we think, oh, I just want to finish this. I'm just, you know, so stop. This is just a practice for putting the full stop. Yeah. So good to do traffic control. Or jam, just a minute. And you can get this app. Do you all know the app called B-Zone?
Yes.
B-E-E.zone. It's got traffic control, it's got a 1-hourly little tune that's very gentle. And in the morning you can do a little meditation. You know, get your virtue scope, do the meditation. So good. Very good to introduce people to that. They don't know if they want to learn meditation, say just look at this app. Just, if you like it, then maybe you want to learn more. It's a very good introduction. Any more questions, comments? Okay, we'll finish with a little meditation. 11:30 we're supposed to finish? Yeah, so we'll just on time. So the easiest way to slow down is to watch your breath. Because it just helps you to detach from everything else. Then as you take your thoughts within, just be mindful of taking your thoughts away from people, from things and from time. Because when I take my thoughts beyond these things that are gross, my thoughts become light. I think qualities of the soul: love, peace, joy. I think about myself as a being of light, separate to the body, a non-physical being. I take my mind to the Supreme, the one that's ever constant, unchanging. Everything in the physical world changes, but this being never changes. This being is beyond the physical, constant, in love, in peace. This being, the Supreme, doesn't know anything but peace, love, and bliss. When I remember myself as a spiritual being, and connect with this being from beyond, I experience a resonance, a deep connection, and I realize that I too am a being of peace, love. I can feel a oneness with God. I don't need to pray or to ask for anything. I connect in union. I become aware of the energy that's created in this union. Clean, clear, powerful energy. And when I experience this, I wonder why. I keep myself so busy, running around doing unnecessary things. Because the sweetness, the love, and the power an energy that resonates, flowing out to the world. We vibrate peace. So as I bring my thoughts back and connect with my body, I think of ways and times that I can increase this experience in my daily life. Because I realize how much power and peace is in this connection. So think of what you will do from today to make sure that there is this connection on a daily basis.